All right, so you guys have all uploaded your light painting pictures into the light painting folder. I've now changed the permissions of that folder, so you guys are only able to view the pictures. That's going to protect people from accidentally deleting or editing the pictures. So what you're going to have to do, you're going to have to open someone's folder. You can use your own pictures or other classmates. So I would encourage you guys to kind of look through, jot down some of the file names and numbers that look interesting. You're going to be doing this 4 times with 4 different pictures. All right. When you have found a picture that you want to use, you're going to have to right click on it and you're going to have to make a copy. And then that copy is going to go into your drive. So when you make a copy, all right, it's going to look a little different because I have access to edit it. But it's going to put it in your drive and then you can move it where you want. So you can kind of organize it however you want. I would encourage you guys to start a new folder in your like Evan's photography folder for unit 3. And depending on how organized you want to get with that, you could do part 1, part 2, and then if you even want subfolders for light painting, for the kaleidoscope, for all that stuff, you can get crazy with the subfolders, but at least have a unit 3 folder with all of your work for this unit kind of contained, okay? So you can put that picture there. When you are ready to edit and you have the copy of the picture that you want saved in your drive, you're going to go to Pixlr. So it's pixlr.com, and I'll just show you what it looks like when you go there for the first time, okay? You can pay for the Pixlr service, but you can also use it for free. What we want to do is this Pixlr Editor. The Pixlr just like app thing is kind of almost like filters and kind of Instagram-y, but we want to open the full editor that kind of resembles Photoshop, okay? So it's going to come to this screen and then your pictures are going to be in your drive. So open the image, it will say from computer, but it will let you go to your Google Drive to open whatever file you saved, all right? So once you have it opened, let's just kind of take a quick look because this is the first time you guys have used this program. And some of you may have used Photoshop before, but it's probably new for most of you. So on the left side of your screen, you're going to see your tool palette. So this has all the different tools that we're going to be using. We're going to practice with a couple of these for what we're going to do today. And then certainly we're going to dig into more of these tools like throughout the week as we look at some of our different editing like processes that we're going to do. These little palettes, they're called, can be moved anywhere you want. So you can really customize your workspace. You can drag them wherever you'd like to put them. On the right side, you're going to see additional palettes as well. So this Navigator palette is a really useful one. This is going to let you like zoom in and out, okay? When you're zoomed in, you can change the part of the picture that you're looking at, so it's really easy to kind of like position what you want to see in your workspace. The other palette that they give you by default is the Layers palette. We're going to use that one in a few minutes, and I'll show you kind of why and how that's really useful. We're going to be practicing a lot with that Layers palette this week. And then they give you a history palette. This will track all of the changes that you do step by step. So it kind of keeps a running log of every single action that you do. And if you need to revert changes, you can step back through time and kind of like undo different actions. They are also going to give you ads because we're using it for free, so you can close that out. And then if you wanted to open up different palettes, you can go to this view menu and you can open up some different palettes that, you know, depending on what you're doing, you might want to be able to see. Okay? Make sense? Okay. Once you have your picture open, we want to do crop. We want to crop the picture. So we want to just cut out, you can see this picture, like we don't need the coat rack or the floor. We can see part of the stand that the backdrop was hanging on. So what I want to do is kind of edit out and just kind of cut out all of that unnecessary stuff. And we're going to crop our image. Also, we are going to be printing some of these, so we want to crop it to a standard size that will be good for printing. So we're going to be cropping all of our pictures to a 5:7 size. All right. So when we do that, our crop tool is the very first tool in the toolbox. It looks like two right angles kind of overlapping each other. And then you'll notice when I click on these different things, all these different tools, do you see how all these things change? Yes? This is called your tool options bar. All right, so this is going to look different depending on whatever tool you're using, that just give different ways to kind of like customize that tool. So when I hit the crop tool, I have an option under constraint. By default, it's going to say no restriction. And that will let you crop, if you wanted to crop to a tiny skinny rectangle or a square or whatever kind of shape you want, right? You can kind of adjust as needed, all right? I don't want to do this, so I clicked somewhere and I get this little alert that comes up that says, do you want to apply these changes? I want to say no because I'm not ready. I made a mistake. Okay. What you're going to want to do to make sure this crops at 5:7 is to do this aspect ratio. All right. Here you're going to set the width and the height. So if you want the width to be longer or the height to be higher, just set your highest one to the 7 and the smallest one to the 5. So if I wanted this to be kind of a landscape picture or a vertical picture, I'm going to do kind of a portrait. So I want the width to be 5 and I want the height to be 7. Okay. That way, when I go to crop, it's always going to maintain that kind of aspect ratio. So whether I crop a little bit or a lot, when I go to save and print it, it'll come out on a 5:7 size piece of paper. All right. So now you can kind of decide how much or how little of the picture you want. I did one earlier this morning, totally differently. I'm going to just kind of show you lots of the options that are available and kind of the range of styles and kind of finished products that you can get even from the same picture. So I'm going to crop. I think this is you, Julia, isn't it? Yep. Do you mind if we use your face? All right. So I'm going to crop and I'm going to kind of think about the rule of thirds, right? So remember, it's going to show that kind of net, and that helps line things up if you're interested in doing that. All right. So I'm going to kind of use that, line it up exactly how I want it. And when I'm ready, I can hit return, or I can just try to click somewhere and it's going to ask, are you sure you want to crop this? When you are ready, just hit yes. Okay. And I can use my Navigator palette to kind of zoom in so I can see a little bit better about what I'm doing. All right. Now, we're going to duplicate the background layer. So layers, you want to kind of think of like this screen as your workspace. And you want to think about layers kind of as sheets of paper. All right. We can stack a piece of paper on top of another piece of paper and we can't see it. We can stack a piece of paper and then cut things out of the top layer so we can see down to the pieces of paper below. That's kind of what your layer palette is like. It allows you to kind of layer, just as it would kind of make sense. It's called the layers palette. Layer different parts of images on top of each other, and we can selectively cut parts out so we can see what's underneath to kind of make a new image. And we can change the properties of the layer to make it transparent or semi-transparent, or have the pixels mixed together in different ways. But for right now, we're going to use the layers palette for just a really simple purpose, to be able to kind of see what our starting point was and then what our manipulations look like to make sure we're kind of happy with the results. So to duplicate the layer, all I'm going to do is where it says background, I'm going to drag this into the new layer icon, which is the one that is right next to the trash can that looks like a piece of paper with the bottom corner folded up. And now I have 2 copies. All right. Right now, both copies look identical. So after I make some edits, I'll kind of show you why we did this. All right. I want to make sure that that layer that's on the top, that's highest in my list, is what I'm clicked on, that's highlighted. And then that way I'll be able to see the changes that I'm making. Okay. Once you've done that, then you're good to start playing around with the different options for editing. So we're going to be looking under the adjustments menu. So under adjustments, there are lots of different things that you guys can play around with. I'm going to show you a couple, and then you can kind of play around as you do your 4 edits to see what, what kind of effect you want to go for, and how far you can kind of push things. You can start, I like to start with levels. This way, this shows you kind of the output levels of your different colors in your picture. It will allow, if you drag this in, the blacks to become blacker and the whites to become whiter. And then this slider in between, the middle values, like the grays, you can make darker or lighter. Okay, so you can play around with kind of how the colors are being like intensified. And then again, if you wanted blacks to no longer look black but to be gray, you can slide those around. Or if you didn't want the whites to be fully white and wanted the whites to show up as gray, you can slide those around. So that's a good one to kind of like start with and do first, especially if you're trying to get a pure black background and maybe there are some like slight textures from the cloth, or maybe you start to see someone's pant leg or something. You can use that levels to kind of make that black really, really black and accentuate kind of the light just by dulling down the background. Under the adjustments, you can also play around with exposure. This is just a good one to know about. If your picture is a little over or underexposed, you can make adjustments here as well. For the light painting, you might want to darken it up a little bit in case it's becoming kind of oversaturated or overexposed with that white light. Okay, so you can kind of pull that slider down that way. You can change all of these things. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory. Brightness and contrast. So if you want to make the whites brighter or darker, or if you want it to be more different between the blacks and the whites, or kind of all merging towards gray. Hue and saturation is fun because you can actually shift the color of the picture by moving around the hue slider. So if you wanted this to take on a red appearance or a green appearance, or blues or greens or yellows or oranges, so you can play around with that. So let's just, for the sake of playing around, maybe I want to make this kind of like blue-green. You can change the saturation to make the colors really intense or moving towards black and white. So if you want to play around with the intensity, you can change the lightness, making things brighter or darker. Okay. If you hit this colorize button too, it'll kind of, and then move the hue slider, it will change all the color in the picture to whatever color you're going for. Okay, which might be a lot for this picture, so I wouldn't want to colorize it, but just by sliding that hue slider, I can start to push some of those colors towards kind of slightly unnatural kind of looks. You can change the color balance, the color vibrance, if you want to really like intensify the color. The curves gives these little like curves that you can pull up or down. You can do this for all the colors globally, or you can change if you wanted to really pump up like the greens. So see how now the greens are really green, and now there's no green left, so the picture is moving more towards the opposite of green, which is reds. Okay, so it allows you to do this separately